Alright folks, turn 8, destruction delivered. I've captured Abrawari and Eisenhut. Abrawari, I lost about 20 firepower all told. Abrawari was a fairly well-defended planet, lots and lots of super space fighters, which are slightly more offensive than they are tanky, as well as a few X6 instigators and some Nozama fighters, which are quite a bit more offensive than tanky since they have 2 attacks each. So, lost a lot of chaff, but that's okay. The Gigantoplanet attacker survived. Also took Eisenhut. Eisenhut, this was actually very, very close firepower-wise, and I got slightly lucky, but this also shows the power of a more proper fleet composition. This still isn't a fantastic fleet composition, but it's better than this. This is all chaff. The Zener and War Monks give very, very little of anything except hit soaking. They eat a hit each to kill. But offensively, they each only have a 5% chance of getting 1 hit. So effectively, this whole group only deployed about 1 hit per round, a little less on average. The Hue 5 Eliminators send out about 1 hit per 2. So we're getting about 13 to 14 hits per round out of this group. So that's where the vast, vast majority of the enemy killing power is actually coming from. Meanwhile, if we're talking about hits, so total, we're getting about 14 or 15 hits per round out of this group, right? Over here, my X5s each have a 1 in 4 chance of sending out a hit, so we're getting about 4 from them. The Hurak Stealth Fighter gives me about 1 each, so we're up to 5. The Sentinel gives me 1 every 6 rounds, pretty much negligible. The A7 Mauler gives me 1.5. We can combine those two plus the little bit of extra that I didn't count from the Hurak Stealth Fighter into 1, so that's about 6 hits. The Gigantoplanet Attacker, however, gives me an average of 16. So my fleet is launching over 20 hits per round. About 22, 23 hits per round that will be allocated across these units. I have fewer units, but a lot of my firepower is concentrated in my Gigantoplanet Attacker, who's hard to kill. He needs about 25 hits on average in order to kill him. So that means that this whole group, even if all of their shots happened to land on the GPA, still on average would not kill it in a combat round. And it's landing 16 hits on them every round, approximately. So, as we run through here, we can see the chaff starts taking hits, but the casualties are already quite lopsided because we have this high damage unit that's being chaffed by all these other units that are scattering some of the hits that are aimed at it. So we're whittling down the enemy's killing power a lot faster than they're whittling down ours, and that's why their firepower is dropping off precipitously while ours isn't. This is why proper fleet composition in Ultracorps is super, super important. So the last 2 rounds, we don't lose anybody because we've killed so much of their hitting power. In any case, just a little note. So we've taken Eisenhut. In terms of player rankings, I'm actually on top right now. I don't anticipate I'll stay that way, but for now, I'm doing quite well. Firepower-wise, I'm competitive. I'm in the pack. World-wise, I actually have the most worlds out of anybody. Net worth, I'm close to the top, and I have 4,600 population, so I'm on top in pop as well. Deploying the Mammoth Terror, we're actually going to get 2 GPAs out next round, which will get us close to the end of our lock, trying to build up a little bit more Ultranium so I can buy the license for something else and keep on rolling right after I finish that. My fleet in Abrawari I haven't deployed to a target yet. We're building Nozama fighters here. We are deploying to hit Einstein in 2 turns, and we've got quite a bit of firepower aimed at Einstein. Over 60. So we should be okay. They do have these TAPs, these Theros All-Purpose Saucers, which serve as kind of very light capital units. But they only take 5 hits each to kill on average, whereas the fleets that are aiming towards Einstein have... yeah, they only have 1 GPA is the thing, so I would like to send Wicked Claw to do that as well. So I think what I'm going to do is, we're going to aim Wicked Claw at Einstein, we're going to crush Einstein with overwhelming firepower, and then we'll spread out from there. In terms of other fleets, we have fleets of chaff heading into Eisenhut, and we've got 2 fleets, including another Gigantoplanet Attacker, landing on Abrawari. So actually, I almost forgot, since I have that GPA landing on Abrawari, the thing to do here is to buy a license for a small ground unit and churn out some of that. I have a lot of Ultranium right now, so I'm going to go for Warmex, I think. So we're going to buy the license for Warmex, and we will build 25 of them. Nope, not 23. Well, okay, fine. 23 plus 2 more. Oh, wait, why is it only saying I can get 21? Do I run out of Ultranium? Oh, no, I'm sorry, they're 12 complexity. I was thinking they were 10. So yeah, so we can get 21 Warmex, and that gives us exactly 286 Ultranium left over. So let's cut that down, and to ensure that we can keep this price if the price goes up, we will build 20, not 200, 20. And then we'll put in a max lock of 50 for our last one. So that will use up all of our population exactly, as well as a whole bunch of Ultranium, but that's alright. When the next GPA lands on Aberwari, it will be able to pick those guys up and keep on a-rolling. We've got some Boron Recon Buggies V2 here. We've got another GPA coming in. It will pick up those guys, plus 7 standard Boron Recon Buggies. That will give it a pretty significant chaff force as well. These guys will be about another 14, 15 firepower to add to what we got, so it'll make about a 40 firepower fleet. Relay, we're moving stuff around there. In Betheria, we've got 9 X5 Raiders that we're going to deploy forward, and at this point we have to start launching attacks on territory that Star Charge has already taken. So I think the plan here is going to be... I need to do a little bit more analysis of Star Charge's position, which I haven't had the chance to do just because I've been really busy lately. But in terms of firepower, we can look here and just real quickly do a count. He's got 40 firepower between those two worlds, 85, almost 100, about 103, 102, 112, call it close to 120 on those planets. And then down here he's got another 20, so about 140 firepower visible. That's unfortunate, because that means he's got about 70 firepower in flight. 70 firepower in flight means that he is making a big move somewhere. Okay, it's actually about 50 firepower in flight, because I'm not counting these guys. In terms of battles, we can list his battles. He captured Orlo this turn. So, and he lost 10 firepower there, so that's right up here. So he just deployed these guys up this way. He might be going to take Ja'alan or Fairclough. But I have to count on... He's got like 50 firepower loose and flying somewhere. Which, I mean, reasonable. I've got more than that loose and flying right now, I think. Because I've got 45 between those two fleets. And then 31 there. So yeah, I've got almost 100 firepower in flight at the moment. Just kind of dangerous, and I need to start making notes. So right now, I'm just going to make real basic notes of what firepower is where. I don't have any note. I'm going to create a note here, and we're going to say on Orlo. Actually, I don't. Orlo. Yeah. We're just going to say 27 FP turn 8, and this kind of thing. This kind of thing is what you have to do to keep track. I don't do it as much as I should, and I think honestly it does kind of hamper me. Notes. That I just have to assume that firepower is coming off him. I'll remember this. It's 3 TK bikes V2 and a Psy Hauler full of chaff is the main damage there. But down here is where I kind of need to keep track. These guys can't move, so they'll still be here. So they have 5 X5 Raiders. I don't need a note to keep track of that. Fighters. And these guys are still the same. Okay, I don't really need many notes right yet. I can keep all that in my brain. My enormous brain. Oh god. I do find this kind of thing is actually very good training for other strategy games, because it does very much teach you to keep track of this stuff. He's quite short on Psy Haulers, I would say, for how much ground chaff he's got, so we'll see what happens with that. And he's building Corvettes very slowly on New Start. In any case, so that's kind of my turn. Eisenhood has a Scanomatic on it, which I'm going to deploy up to Mimer. Excuse me. Actually, I don't need to do that, because Mimer already has 2. Oh god, that cough. Wow, my eyes are watering. Ah, allergies are killing me. Okay, we're going to put that one on Aberwari. So we're going to end up with a big old fleet on Einstein. And we'll have some fleets on Aberwari. We may be able to make a strike at Soy Boy, but to be honest, unless I think Star Charger is going to go in and take it, a strike on Soy Boy isn't super vitally important. The ideal situation actually is Star Charger hits Soy Boy, beats this 120 firepower fleet, takes heavy losses doing so, and then I roll in with a couple hundred firepower immediately on top of him, or 100 firepower or whatever, and crush him while he's weak. So what I may do is, that's 281 units, which means it's 5 turns from Arion. That is an unfortunate number. If it was 1 unit closer, I could hit it in 4 turns. But so what I may do is from Arion, deploy to Mimer, these 2 GPAs I'm getting. That's 2 turns. It only shaves 10 points off my total travel time. and then from Mimer deploy 2 turns to... I may launch straight for Soy Boy. Just gather up ground units on Mimer and launch my my attack fleet from Arion, because that'll be almost 50 firepower of GPAs. Plus, you know, all the ground chaff I can scrape together. I'm transitioning Forsworn into building TK tanks for Arion. Piranhas is building Psy Haulers. Bethira is still locking X5s because I have this order locked at a relatively good price, so I'm going to finish that one up. Cabna is building TK tanks for Arion. A203 crawlers. Khandra is launching some Ultranium to Arion. And Worthy Tornado is doing the same. And the next fleet out of Relay will also carry some population. Mimer has... Aberwari is going to be feeding Mimer. Bia is already feeding Mimer, including feeding him more tanks. And Eisenhut is going to be feeding Mimer. They've got cargo boosters already, so these 3 cargo boosters we're going to auto-fleet up. Get some Ultranium going towards Mimer. And... so I think this one will carry Ultranium. We'll have 1 cargo booster carrying population, and then 1 that's just set to carry all the Zenran Warmonks it can. So that'll be fine. Okay, so that's the turn. Kind of quick. Probably not the absolutely ideal turn, but it will work for my purposes. I'm in a good position. I'm worried about going to war with Star Charger. I'm worried that will absolutely destroy me. But, you know, you gotta go to war with somebody sometime. So we'll see how it goes. In any case, thanks for watching. See y'all in turn 9. Okay, folks, turn 9. No battles for us this turn, but we are setting some up. So we're hitting Einstein with a lot of units. We're also sending a scanner there, just to make sure that it can see things. But so we've got a total of something like 90 firepower hitting Einstein this turn, which should sweep away the defenders with very little problem. In particular, we have multiple of our capital units hitting there. So 11 raiders there. We've got a fairly large mixed fleet containing some high damage units, but mainly chaff. We've got a Gigantoplanet attacker, 17 X5s, and then another Gigantoplanet attacker. So 2, I think this will be our first battle where we've had 2 of those capital units. We're also heading towards Mira. We've got 5 firepower of chaff, 9 X5 raiders arriving in 2 turns. We can hit Mira in 1 turn from Aberwari. And so what we're going to do is, I was about to deploy that fleet, but actually I'm canceling that. We're going to do the Entradishar thing. We've got this other fleet deploying to Aberwari, A203 crawlers carrying some chaff units. We've got Ruby Diadem moving to Aberwari with 45 firepower led by a Gigantoplanet attacker. And Aberwari already has the Proud Banner with a Gigantoplanet attacker and a bunch of chaff on it. And we're just going to gather all of those troops and, well... I haven't decided whether we're going to smash Mira or whether we're going to go straight for Soy Boy. I think we can go straight for Soy Boy. Because we're going to hit Einstein this turn. That's 80 units from Soy Boy. If we then launch from Einstein and Aberwari, we can concentrate should be close to 200 firepower on Soy Boy 3 turns from now. And I think that will be an overwhelming attack. Paladin has woken up, and he started to take planets, but all of his firepower is visible right now. He took Serendipity with some casualties down to 25 firepower, lost all of his X6s and 2 of his Boron Recon buggies. In doing this, of course, he also stops the Independence from auto-building, which is nice. So he took Serendipity from Star Charger, it must be noted. And then he also took Flinch from Star Charger. And the amount of firepower that Star Charger had on these planets makes me think that this was not an organized thing. This was just something that Paladin did. And if we look at his profile, we can see his last log on was in fact today. So he did log on, and he did launch his fleet. So he's, I think, dead last in Destruction right now. Dead last in Worlds. Yes, he is tied with Klosh. And if we view battles in Klosh, Klosh is under attack by Sun Tzu and has been since fairly early on in the game. So we can see here, Sun Tzu launched a fairly significant fleet, actually, carrying some Ultranium with it, which is interesting, to attack this this world where he was building Hurak stealth fighters, where Klosh was building Hurak stealth fighters. Took almost no casualties. And this was his homeworld. This was Klosh's homeworld, Dominaria, and he lost it turn 5 to a very gutsy attack by Sun Tzu. So yeah, that's wow. If we look at Sun Tzu actually only has 6 worlds himself. Because it looks like he, excuse me, he has been under attack by multiple other players for quite some time. Here we see Caruso hit him with this fleet. This may have been a mistake of some kind, I guess. At the same time as he was attacking Klosh. And then Klosh bounced a couple of those. Must have been just scout fleets. It's interesting. This is an interesting look at how a war in Ultracorps works. But at the same time, Mongrel then launched a very large fleet for that part of the game at Lonrar and won. He didn't. This wasn't a homeworld, but he destroyed a lot of firepower here. And he didn't take heavy casualties, to be honest. He lost about 55. Well, he took fairly heavy casualties. He lost about 50 firepower compared to Sun Tzu's 70 some odd. This was a pretty well built fleet, but it didn't really have a capital unit. It had a megabot, just a basic bitch megabot, which is it's a very light capital unit. But Mongrel had a CR Org 2, which is a much heavier capital unit in terms of offense. Some A7 Maulers and a couple of TK tanks. The A7 Maulers in particular provide significant punch. TK tanks are actually slightly tankier than they are offensive. And the CR Org 2 provides a lot of punch for its firepower rating. Its defense is quite low for a capital unit. On average, it only takes about 15 hits to kill a CR Org 2, or possibly a little bit less, because it has a 7 out of 100 chance of dying to any particular attack. But that has an offense of 60 and 15 attacks, so it lands on average about 9 hits per combat round. For a firepower of 11, 9 hits per combat round is fairly high. Similarly, A7 Maulers land about a hit and a half per combat round, so they're pretty punchy as well. So, yeah, so Sun Tzu took a lot of damage early on from this fairly punchy attacking fleet, and wasn't dealing a whole lot of damage back because his defensive forces are fairly soaky, fairly chaffy. So he was being whittled down a lot faster than Mongrel, and most of the shots going into Mongrel's fleets were landing on his all-terrain rovers, which were soaking up all the damage, and nothing else was really dying. He did lose a Mauler there, lost his Sentinel there, but nobody cares about that. It was a long battle because this fleet is so soaky. TK tanks are hard to kill, Megabots fairly hard to kill. But it was always going to go Mongrel's way, and so Mongrel, came out of it without too much damage. He lost a lot of his rovers, and that was about the extent of it. Where did he must have had a sudden fall somewhere. Yeah, it was just his rovers getting whittled down. He started off with over 80, and by the end he only had 17. But yeah, so the point being that Sun Tzu is kind of in trouble, but he's taken down. Sorry, that was the wrong button. He's taken down Klosh with him. So Klosh is just completely out of the game. Sun Tzu also probably pretty much out of the game. Coward down here. I think everyone who's down at this level is probably, is at war. And in particular, Coward is actually at war with at least 2 people. He also hit Shaster, and this is a common theme. Commonly, early on, what will happen is one of your fleets will bounce against somebody else's fleet and lose. That makes you look vulnerable. And so then other people will start to come in against you. So if we look at Coward real quick, let's give him a color just so we can see who he is. Let's make him bright green. And we can see Coward has one world out here with a lot of firepower on it. It's actually cut off by 2 planets, Spanos and Nubby. Nubby's up this way and Spanos is down this way, near Deleted Player. Who is Deleted Player? Enclave. The Enclave 33 quit on turn 6. Probably because he had lost everything except his capital, or almost everything except his capital. To Jolly Bones, who charged into his cluster and started taking him out even before they finished taking out the Independents. So sad. But in any case, so the early wars are in full swing. I am, if anything, slightly late in going into an early war, which is fine. Being late going into a war is a perfectly reasonable way to be. But so, to get back to what I was saying originally, I do have this 5 firepower fleet going to Mira in 2 turns. And so what I can do The problem is if I wait 2 turns to go into Mira and then take 2 turns to go to Soy Boy, I'll be late, whereas from Einstein, because that'll be 4 turns, whereas from Einstein it'll be only 3, because I'm hitting Einstein this turn and then it's 2 turns to Soy Boy. So what I'd prefer to do would be either wait or hit Mira right now and then launch on Soy Boy. I think instead what I'm going to do is just wait. I'm going to let that fleet bounce off Mira. I can play that off as an accident without too much trouble. Or rather, I can send Star Charger a truthful message saying, oh, hey, sorry about bouncing that 5 firepower off you. You know, I'm in Tridachar, we move slow. I'm not used to the game, not used to being back in the game yet, and I just, you know, plans changed once after you took it, which is all perfectly accurate. Plans have changed. I'm going to go kill Soy Boy. Yeah, because I think in 3 turns I can hit Soy Boy with more firepower than Paladin has in his entire empire. Like, without too much trouble. I've got these 2 A203 crawlers. Not sure what I want to do with them exactly. Actually, that's a lie. I know what I want to do with them. I want to make them an auto fleet, and I want to take Ultranium and Population to Arion with them. So we're going to load all Ultranium. We're going to load all Population. Just going to strip Kandra out. I've decided not to make Kandra a production center. We're just going to pile population on Arion. So, future planning for Arion. As Arion ends up further and further away from the front lines, which it has at this point, it's at least 170 units or so away from anywhere that I could potentially attack. The value of building Gigantoplanet attackers here goes down, because of course, they only have 70 speed, and the game is a fixed length. So we're at turn 9 right now. It only goes about 30 turns, which means that building slow units in Arion and launching them on long trips has less and less value as time goes by, because what that means is when the game ends, I'll end up with all these units in transit that never actually did anything. So as the game goes forward, your homeworld and similar worlds that are further back in your empire have to transition to building faster units, and speed becomes more and more important. So that's what we're moving towards here. We're finishing off our lock on the Gigantoplanet attacker. We're taking a little bit of time out to build an EDM sensor 200 so that we have a scanner on Arion. We could potentially shell out for the TK scan 420. And actually, in fact, that's probably a good idea. It's a good bit more expensive and complex, but it has a much, much longer scan range. And for your homeworld, which is your most important production center, that may be valuable. So I'll tell you what. We could take that out. We'd have to jiggle around, but basically what I'm doing is I'm transitioning into Megabot production on Arion. And the reason I'm doing that is Megabots can be, for 2 reasons. First of all, Megabots can be upgraded to be very fast. With the Type 9 Hyper Booster, Megabot V2s have speed 180. Once you've then slapped the G21 Arc Cannon on them, they go down to speed 140, but they have very high offensive and defensive stats, and so very high firepower. Now, the other reason is Megabots V3 are an extremely efficient way to use Ultranium once you've bought the licenses, because the upgrades cost very, very little by way of Ultranium, but a significant amount of complexity. So, for example, if we look here, Gigantoplanet attackers right now get me high firepower, 20 firepower, total combat ability very comparable, actually, to a Megabot V3. A little bit squishier, but almost the same damage, actually higher damage, plus carrying capacity. So they have a lot of value, but they're only speed 70. They cost me 750 complexity and currently 209 Ultranium, and the price has dipped slightly. It'll probably go back up because Arion is, well, Arion's finishing off this one. It's only about 600 complexity or so it's spending on that, so it shouldn't really push the price up. But in any case, so they cost right now about a 3-to-1 ratio of money to Ultranium, a little bit lower. More like 4-to-1. A Megabot costs 146 Ultranium and 500 complexity. So that's actually a very similar ratio. It's a little bit higher for the Megabot. But the Type 9 Hyper Booster only costs 32 Ultranium because as an upgrade, since very, very little, a very small percentage of the galaxy's population is typically being spent on building upgrades specifically, the price almost always goes to the minimum and stays there. So this makes the total price of a Megabot V2, which is a very, very fast, light combat unit, 700 complexity, and 178 Ultranium. So now the ratio is better than it is for the Gigantoplanet attacker. Then you upgrade it to the V3 by building the G21 arc cannon. That costs 1,000 complexity and only currently 63 Ultranium, and that will go down. It will drop to about 37. So at that point, you're spending a total of barely over 200 Ultranium and 1,700 complexity building a fast 22 firepower unit. Now, it sounds like, at first blush, that should be a problem in that I'm getting the same firepower as a GPA for 1,000 extra complexity, but what it actually means is my homeworld is working, producing this very useful unit, which is twice as fast as a GPA, and so can hop from Arion to, worlds out like Hoark or Clamon or Kritrim or Einstein. It can reach those worlds in 2 turns of travel instead of 4 or 5. And I'm getting my population working without spending all of my Ultranium, which means I can save up Ultranium either to mass more expensive units or to buy more licenses. So that, for example, I can buy things like... So there are other options, but that's a very, very efficient way to spend your money in the late game when money is your main limiting factor. When population... when you have, 3,000 or 4,000 population on a world, and if I was going to spend 4,000 population on GPAs, it would also require me to spend 1,000 Ultranium. And Ultranium becomes my limiting factor because as we spend down the stockpiles, I'm limited to just the RER values of the planets around my homeworld to get more Ultranium, whereas population just stacks up and stacks up and stacks up. The other alternative here would be to buy the license for the CR Org. The CR Org basically gives me the firepower of a Megabot V3 right off the bat, slightly slower, a little bit less complexity, a little bit more cash up front. So the CR Org is basically a shortcut to the Megabot V3. Couple of downsides to it. First of all, it doesn't have the upgrade effect going for it, so the upgrades are not, super cheap. So, because there are no upgrades. So that being so, you do end up spending more Ultranium to get CR Orgs as compared to Megabot V3s. And that also means that this price fluctuates a lot more. With Megabot V3s, pretty much that these are going to be 32 and 37 after a short time. So you're going to be spending, 69 Ultranium on your upgrades. So it's just 69 plus whatever the base price of Megabots is, which also tends not to be super high because the people who are building Megabots are spending a significant fraction. Like the total complexity that's going into Megabot V3s is being divided between Megabots, Hyper Boosters, and Arc Cannons, right? And Arc Cannons actually have more complexity in them, twice as much as Megabots. So the result is, because the game calculates the total complexity that's being spent on these things, the Megabots price stays low once people start upgrading, because they're not building as many of the base units. And the upgrades complexity stays low. The Type 9 Hyper Booster, because its complexity is low, and so nobody spends a whole lot on it just because of that. And the Arc Cannon, because there aren't many Arc Cannons being built compared to the total number of units that are being built. Because Megabot V3s take a while to build, and so you don't have, where I might have 10 or 12 Gigantoplanet attackers, somebody who's building Megabot V3s might only have 4 or 5. And of those, the G21 Arc Cannons only represent slightly over half of the total complexity that's gone into building them. So you see what I'm saying. The price ends up depressed for all 3 parts. That's not true of the CR Org, because the CR Org is all of the parts in and of itself. So all of the complexity that's being spent building CR Orgs is being spent on this one unit and pushes the price up. Now, nobody's been building them yet, because at 540 Ultranium, they're very not worth it. That's a lot of money to be spending on a capital unit. Far more money than I have spent on any of my capital units. But as the price drops, the price will bottom out at 270 next turn. At that point, buying CR Orgs becomes kind of attractive, because, like I said, they're a shortcut to the Megabot V3. Now, they can't be upgraded further, which the Megabot V3 can. You can build the Hyper Annihilator Array, which costs a whopping 4,000 complexity, and it upgrades the Megabot to, one of the 2 most powerful units in the game. Still 140 speed, 90 offense, 50 attacks, and 98 defense. A fleet in and of itself. It's worthwhile to have Megabot V4s if you can assemble a production center that can build them. But that only happens typically pretty late game, like after turn 20 or turn 18 to 20, you might start seeing V4s coming out. The CR org never reaches that height of power, but it's faster to build, and that's kind of its attraction. So I'm strongly tempted to go for them instead. Also means less license cost, which is a consideration, because the licenses for the Megabot, Hyper Booster, and Arc Cannon add up to 1,450, whereas the CR Org license cost is only 1,250, so you do save 200 Ultranium there, which makes up a little bit of the cost difference. If this is 270 versus about 150 for Megabots, which is where they kind of tend to hover between 125, 150, it may actually spike up as more people start building them. So, you know, the price difference tends to be like 270 to 300 for the CR Org, versus a Megabot V3 in toto costs you about 250, maybe 300. They kind of hover in the same range. And the economies of different games, of course, can be very different, so kind of have to see where it goes. I don't know. Megabots are a very traditional way to go. CR Orgs less so, because they are slightly more expensive, but to be honest, I'm actually doing really well on Ultranium. And I've still got some to burn in my cluster, so I may go the CR. I think I'm going to go the CR Org route instead, now that I look at it. So we're just going to cancel those, so that leaves me 1,361 Ultranium, and I am going to burn that Ultranium almost entirely buying the CR Org license. That leaves me 111 ult, 560 population. Boy, what will I do with my fucking riches here? I may buy some tanks. I've got incoming 200 Ultranium there and 300 Ultranium there, both of which will hit next turn. So next turn I'll still have like 700 ult, which will be enough to get me going. So I think, nope, not licenses. Not licenses. I think then I'm going to stop that. I keep pressing the wrong buttons because I'm not thinking. I think then I'm going to buy some A7 Maulers up here. They cost 15, but 65 complexity. So I can buy like 8 of them. Nope, I can only get 7 apparently. I can buy 7 of them. And then I'll wait on the CR Orgs because I'm betting that their price is going to go down one more step. I don't think anyone is buying them yet. Yeah, no one is spending any money on CR Orgs just yet, so we will be the first to do that next turn. In any case, so that's the plan. We're going to try to take Soy Boy, get in on the Xeron Force Coil action. Xeron Force Coils have been being built, of course, because they are, you know, special and useful, but their price is still trending down as upgrades. Xeron medium cruisers are still fairly expensive, actually, 231, plus the Force Coil currently costs 70. So you're looking at spending about 300 Ultranium, once again on something that's about 20 firepower, and that you know, it's fairly consistent. That's where you tend to hover. There's various different ways to get there, but very often you're looking at between like 300-400 Ultranium to get 20 firepower out of a capital unit, and it just kind of ends up being a question of how you spend it, what form you spend it in. But the nice thing about the heavy cruiser is, of course, it's fairly tough, and it has carrying capacity and decent, not exceptional, but decent speed. So you can, if you can turn these guys out, then you can I can use them as a replacement for my Gigantic Planet Attackers, which become slower and slower and clunkier as the game goes on, and the distances over which I am campaigning expand. But to be honest, even if I take Soy Boy pretty quickly here, what I may do is just concentrate some Ultranium real quick and slap down a GPA license and pump some of them out, just because they are they're easier to get. Because 450 complexity, it's a total of 900 complexity for the Xeron Heavy Cruiser. Well, no, actually, I take it back. He already has 900 population on Soy Boy, so no, I would just start cranking out heavy cruisers on Soy Boy itself. So yeah, that's the plan. I know this one's been a little bit long again because of that discourse on the economy, but the economy is actually a very, very important part of this game. And it's worth thinking about in that kind of detail. And I have not been, let me be clear, I don't play this game with the kind of obsessive attention to detail that a lot of people do. You may notice I still only have a couple of a couple of notes, only one note actually. So you can see here, obviously he's hopped away from Urlo. I'm just going to delete that note. I try to keep them, but honestly I forget and I run out of time. And it never really happens, so I always just kind of rely on my brain, which takes me more time, I think, but I feel like it's worth it. So Star Charger, interestingly, Star Charger is definitely expanding in different directions away from Paladin's cluster, especially, and which is an interesting choice. I think he's doing it because the nobodies have been auto-building so aggressively in this cluster, and so all of these worlds are super, super hard to take, and relatively low value because so much of the Ultranium has been burned away. Now, this planet, Gahun, if I could hit Gahun in like a turn or two, I would, because it's worth destroying. At this point in the game, it's worth destroying 80 firepower and taking the losses that result to get a hold of 1500 Ultranium. That's an expensive license plus a head start on capital ship production. It's worth it. But as it is, I think we're gonna hit Einstein. We're gonna take Soy Boy. We're gonna clear out the rest of the planets in this cluster that have already been taken. Jabrea, like, fuck Jabrea. I'm probably not going to worry about it for right now. Kadesh, likewise, not really going to worry about it right now. But we'll definitely be taking Soy Boy just because Paladin has no possible way of stopping us. Unless things are, like, unless he's very much more badass than I have seen so far. And then we'll roll right in, take his worlds, concentrate production there, start churning out XHCs, and be in really good shape. So, thanks for watching. See y'all next turn.